Here it is. Show me the money. Show me the money! That's it, brother, but you got to yell that shit! Show me the money! I need to feel you, Jerry! Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money! Show me the money!
What's up, adventure travelers? Ray here from Two Wheels to Everywhere, and only 56 days until the ride begins. I'm here in my sister's and brother-in-law's garage because it's all gotten very serious. My house is rented out and only about a month until this little baby here goes into the crate and heads to Australia. This week's video should be of interest to anyone that's thinking of undertaking a ride, large or small. As you saw from the little intro clip, it's about how do we budget and how much money do we need to go on an adventure motorcycle ride. Now, every single ride is different, whether it's the length or the type of riding you're doing or where you want to stay. So it's a very haphazard process, and I can't say that I've mastered it, and I can't say that I know exactly how much the ride is going to cost. But let me show you my process, and hopefully this will help you in budgeting and planning for your ride. So let's get out of the garage and into the kitchen, onto the laptop, and we'll start crunching some numbers. Alrighty, so here we are at Command Central, otherwise known as the kitchen. What you can't tell is I've already made this video twice in its entirety. The first time I made it in the evening and I was tired and I didn't like the footage, and I've just realized that the second time I shot it, this afternoon, there was no sound. Oh, the joys. Anyway, enough of my trials and tribulations, let's get into it for a third time. Hopefully I sort of know what I'm talking about by now. I approached the budgeting or forecasting for costing this trip in setup costs and on the road costs. So for better or for worse, that's how I approached this in the first instance. The setup costs are everything I need to do to get the bike on the boat to Australia, and also other things such as inoculations and paperwork and the carnet. The on-the-road costs obviously are fuel, accommodation, food, other forms of transport, and everything that goes along with a round-the-world adventure motorcycle trip. So what I'm about to show you is what I call my startup spreadsheet. I started off by making a list of all the physical things that I thought I'd need for the trip, starting with the motorcycle and the riding gear, the camera gear, camping gear, etc., etc. And on top of that, I added things like the inoculations, the carnet, and so on. I very quickly came up with a cost of about 50,000 New Zealand dollars to get me going, and a year later, it's surprisingly accurate. So here it is on the screen. You'll see my colourful, colour-coded headings. There's no particular reasons around the colour coding, just to make it stand out. So you'll see on the far left, I've got the bike and then the riding gear and so on, the toolkit and the luggage and what have you. So if you want to pause that spreadsheet and go through it and have a look at the different line items and knock yourself out. Just remember the costings are in New Zealand dollars, not US dollars or any other currency. It only took a week or two to do the research and go through the list. Obviously, everything that's on the spreadsheet wasn't there initially. As I learned what I needed, I added things to it. You'll see the number down the bottom is approximately $46,000. What I don't have in that number is the $5,000 deposit for the carnet. Because that's going to be refunded to me when I bring the bike back to New Zealand, I haven't included it as an actual cost, but it is $5,000 that I needed to come up with. In case you're wondering what the green wording versus the black wording is, when I made the list and put the approximate costs in, everything was in black, and as I actually spent the money, I turned it to green. You'll see some items there that are still in black, and those are items that I haven't actually had to spend money on, but that I am taking with me. unless of course there's a question mark after it, which means I'm probably not. But anyway, that is what it is. Have a look at it. If there's any questions on my spreadsheet, please put them in the comments below. The next step was figuring out what it's going to cost me to be on the road day in and day out. I started with the two relatively easier costs that I thought I might be able to get a handle on. First was the fuel. I figured out that I'm going to need approximately 3,500 litres of fuel based on the fuel efficiency of the DR650 and pricing 1 litre of fuel at 2.5 New Zealand dollars per litre. That's going to cost me around about $8.5 grand for the fuel. I used the same sort of template or equation for accommodation and food. I priced accommodation at 50 New Zealand dollars a day over 600 nights. That's 30,000 New Zealand dollars, and the same with food. 50 New Zealand dollars is only about 30 US dollars. That might be a bit light on the accommodation front, but I will be staying with friends and contacts along the way for a little bit, so hopefully 30,000 US dollars is about right. I'll be camping where possible to keep costs down, obviously in places where it's cheaper to stay in boarding houses or motels such as Southeast Asia, and I'm not even sure if there's any camping grounds in Southeast Asia, but I'll always be going for the relatively cheap option as long as it's safe and warm and dry. The next part I looked at were the flights. Once again, relatively easy to calculate. The table that I'm showing you here, you'll see the round figures. I haven't used exact figures, I've used round figures, rounded them up a little bit to be on the safe side. The London to Auckland flight might be a little bit more than that, but I've allowed a bit more for the other flight. So I think about $4,000 for the flights in all. Next up is the ferries. The ferry trips, I've got roughly about 4 ferry trips across the whole journey. I've put those at about 250 New Zealand dollars each, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but I think $1,000 should cover it. Next little table is the freight. So obviously starting in New Zealand, you can't get very far. It's a tiny group of little islands at the bottom of the world, so it needs to be shipped to Sydney and then shipped from Perth, etc., etc. Now I've been lucky enough to get some sponsorship that's going to cover all the freight. I'm not exactly sure what the freight's going to cost, but I've put a retail price on it of $15,000. Might be more, might be less, but I just wanted to put a figure in there. Now those of you that watched the last video would have seen me refer to the IHC. So there is a charity ride to this component, and that's what's enabled me to get some sponsorship. I'll talk about the sponsorship once I've got through the costing of everything, and I'll talk a little bit more about the IHC as well. So moving on to the main table that's got all the costs in it together. I'll put it up on the screen now. You can see the first line item is the setup. If you go down and add on row number 10 paperwork, that gives you the $46,000 from the first spreadsheet. I broke them up into setup, which is more my capital costs, like buying things like camping gear and cameras and what have you, and the paperwork was more things like inoculations and the carnet and the international driver's license and so on. So I just broke them up into those two elements. No particular reason, but that's where that $46,000 comes in. Next row down are the flights, and then the ferry and the freight. We've spoken about all of those. Fuel, accommodation, food. The next line that we haven't spoken about is bike repairs and maintenance. I've put 3,000 New Zealand dollars in there, 2,000 US. Should be enough. I'm not expecting any major expenditure. I'm taking all the consumable spares with me, like oil filters and air filters and that sort of thing, but who knows. So I've just put $3,000 in there. Paperwork we've spoken about. Next line down, comms and IT, 3,000 New Zealand dollars. That's going to cover things like SIM cards, and also for those of you that watched the tech video, I have a little Zoleo emergency satellite tracker That's 40 New Zealand dollars a month. So over 20 months, that's going to cost $800 to run. So that's part of the $3,000. And then, yeah, I just picked the number $3,000. Hopefully that's enough. Line number 13 is activities, fees, etc. So fees to get into museums, activities, if I want to do something like hot air ballooning, $5,000. Hopefully it's enough. I'm not planning on doing anything too super expensive, but we'll see. The last line is a contingency of 5%, so there's roughly $7,000 there, and that gives a total of $153,000. So that $100,000 that I've budgeted for the 20 months on the road and to get me back to New Zealand is very, very approximate. I've got no idea if it's enough or too much, but hopefully it's in the ballpark. So now we have our figure of $153,000. Where does the $153,000 come from? And I'll answer that question now. For those of you that have been to my website, twowheelstoeverywhere.com, you would have seen that there's a charity element to this ride, and I did touch on it in the previous video. My charity of choice is the IHC, and here's my IHC cap, as you can see. The IHC organisation looks after intellectually disabled people in New Zealand countrywide, and they do an amazing job. The reason I chose this charity was that my uncle at the age of 2 was struck down with meningitis, and he suffered severe brain damage, but he lived a long life to the age of 71. He passed away in 2015, and the IHC did an amazing job of looking after him for his whole life. So as a bit of a thank you, I thought that seeing I'm doing the whole YouTube channel and what have you, it'd be nice to raise a bit of money on the side and help them look after the intellectually disabled members of the New Zealand community. So having never raised funds for a charity before, I put my little presentation together and marched off to some very sizable, very well-known national and multinational companies in New Zealand, and quickly got a flat no from all of the big companies, but very encouragingly, I got a yes from a handful of smaller companies and individuals. You would have seen some of those in the opening credits, so I'll just talk briefly about my sponsors. First up is GDF. GDF is a small freight company, and they're very kindly getting my motorcycle around the world for me. They're based out at Auckland Airport, and if you want anything freighted anywhere, give them a call. Go to gdf.co.nz and find the phone number, and they'll help you out with your freight. Shout out to Gavin, Amanda, and Andy, the owners of GDF. Thanks for your support, guys, really appreciate it, and so does the IHC. Secondly is an Australian company, Gatto Sales and Repairs. Gatto specialises in excavators, and they are the dealer for Kobelco. So if you're in central New South Wales and you need anything excavator related, go and see Gatto, gatto.com.au. Gatto is owned by Chad Vardnell, and Chad and one of the Gatto employees, Justin, are coming with me for the first half of the ride across Australia, from Newcastle to South Australia. And it doesn't hurt that I've known Chad since I was 11 years old. Chad's not only a very successful businessman, but also a bit of an adventurer like myself, and he's a huge personality, so I'm sure you're all looking forward to meeting him online, and we're certainly going to have some laughs in those first couple of weeks. So thanks Chad, and thanks Gatto for the support. Next on the list is Burger Fuel, the best gourmet burgers in all of New Zealand. Joseph, the CEO, and a mate of mine has already been a supporter of the IHC, and thanks to Nikki as well, the marketing manager there. Really appreciate the support. So for all of you viewers in New Zealand, go out and get some Burger Fuel. You know it's the best burger in town, in the city, in the country. It's just the best burger, full stop. Next shout out is to Argyle Property Group. Argyle develop and manage property throughout Auckland and New Zealand. And I'd like to say a very big thank you to Jerome and Nigel, but also to the rest of the Argyle team. Thanks guys, really appreciate it. Also on the list is Sonia and Glenn Hawkins, who you would have seen on the opening credits. Sonia's my sister and she's a long-term supporter of the IHC as well. Glenn's my brother-in-law. So thanks, Son and Glenn. Thanks for all the support and thanks for giving me somewhere to live the month before I leave. Always handy. Last and hopefully not least is another friend of mine, Andy Casey. Andy is a property developer and investor, and Andy's son Kahu has some intellectual disabilities, and Andy has kindly offered to support the ride as well. So thank you, Andy, thank you, Kahu, and I hope you enjoy what's coming up on the channel. So that's some pretty amazing support, and it comes to a total of about $55,000, which is a third of the cost. Amazing. So where's the other $100,000 coming from? Well, that would be me. I've got about 40 grand in the tin, and I'll be renting my house out, and over the 2 years, that'll provide me with about another 40 grand. So that's only 80 grand. I've tried to overestimate the costs a little bit, so hopefully that 20 grand gap won't actually be 20 grand. I am going to monetize the YouTube channel, so hopefully that'll be good for maybe, I don't know, maybe a few $1,000s over the 20 months. I may be able to secure 1 or 2 or 3 other small sponsors as I go, but if the worst comes to the worst, I do have a couple of people who will lend me some short-term money that I can pay them back when I come back to New Zealand and get a job. I was worried that I might get 80 or 90% of the way through the trip and run out of money, but I do have that bridging finance option, and I'm sure it won't be more than 10 or 20,000 New Zealand dollars, which I'll be able to pay off in under a year. So I will make it to the end. Whether I'll make it without having to make a loan or not, we'll see. I could have stayed at work for an extra year and saved up the money, but I'm not getting any younger, and my dad's 84 now, so it's got to be now. While I'm at it, I'd just like to explain how the donations to the IHC work. There's a website in New Zealand called Give a Little, and it's a professional fundraising page. I think the one in America is called GoFundMe, so those sorts of things. It's set up by professionals, it's all legal, and the funds go directly to the charity, so they don't have anything to do with me. I can't dip my fingers in the tin and take the donations and use them for the ride. The money goes directly to the Give a Little page, and at the end of each month, the money goes to the IHC. There is a counter to show how much money has been raised, and you can either give anonymously or you can put a message. Now, for those people that want a shout out from all the corners of the world that I'm going to be in, be more than happy to do that. If there's a birthday message or some particular message that you'd like me to share on the YouTube channel, then please put that in the donation notes, and it'll be great fun to do a shout out for you. If there's any questions around the donations or the Give a Little page, please drop them below in the comments. I know that my cousin in Australia, she did have a problem donating via the Chrome website, and she had to go in through Firefox. So just letting you know, not quite sure what that problem was. Now, I was lucky enough to be invited to an IHC Care Home Christmas Party. So I'd just like to share a bit of footage from the Christmas party with you.
Hello, my name is Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
And I like going to the gym twice a week.
Twice a week? Yeah?
And I do lots of programs, like I go jumping bowling.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been haven't been to Special Olympics for a long time. We normally have a chance to go every week, but I don't know what happened these days.
Yeah. And what do you like to do at the gym?
I like to go on the bike.
The bike, yeah?
And the other bike, the kind of thing like no matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a trainer, and they teach me on the machines as well.
Fantastic. And do you feel good when you've done your workout at the gym?
I do.
Yeah?
And I lose lots of weight.
Yeah.
And I get fast.
And it makes you feel strong and healthy, yeah? Oh, fantastic. All right, you want to say bye to everyone?
Bye, everybody.
All right, thank you. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. And hopefully I'll be getting out to 1 or 2 more care homes before I get on the plane and head off to Australia. There might even be a chance to visit some care homes or institutions as I ride around the world. I'm talking to the IHC about that, and we're going to see if we can set something up as I go. All right, well, 3rd time filming this. Hopefully it's all come out okay, the sound's kosher, and I can get on to editing it. There's been a lot of talking on these videos so far. Next week I'm getting on the bike and riding around the North Island for a week or so. Going to test out the bike, test out the camping gear, test out the camera gear, and just give everything a good run. It's going to be interesting, even though it's raining a lot this summer. It's high holiday season in January in New Zealand, so it's going to be a bit hit and miss with getting campsites and finding places to stay. So there might be a couple of side of the road expeditions, who knows. But looking forward to getting out and actually doing some real riding with all the gear packed on the back and bringing that to you in a couple of weeks. So thanks for tuning in. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe and ring the bell. If you know anyone else that might be interested in this journey, please share it with them. And if you're keen to support the IHC, click the link below. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.